Hi, this is Michael Nishke of Retirement Singularity. This is part two of my interview with Alex Zhavoronkov. In part two, we continue our discussion of research funding in the United States and elsewhere. We also discuss ways to get people to care about their health. We get into the need for advocacy, as well as ways to counter the influences of the fast food and tobacco lobbies. And we also discuss how to enjoy the benefits of a long life by investing in yourself through continual education and optimizing your health.
Was reading a poll recently of scientists that up to 20% of them intend to leave the United States. Where do you think that leaves the U.S.? And do you not think there's some kind of a crisis in terms of research that could occur in the United States?
Well, that's a crisis, but not of this kind of sort where the crisis is triggered by the lack of funding. The funding
Okay.
is there, it's just the distribution of this funding is not efficient. And
Hmm.
yes, if you do a poll today, you'll see that a lot of scientists are planning to leave. But I would say, probably to that 20% of scientists in the US are Chinese already, believe it or
Okay, I
not.
guess
And
going home.
I mean, we don't need to be, it's within the framework of, utmost political correctness, because it's probably more. Uh, Much more because some of the conferences I attend, I go to some of the Department of Defense talks, and the last slide will have only Chinese family names and the first names as well, so
Huh.
where they don't change the first name, and that's great because again, China is producing some of the world's most brilliant scientists right now, and that trend is now unstoppable. They're also spending money more properly than the US, and I hope that they're going to avoid some of the mistakes the US did. Because if you look at current funding paradigm at the NIH, the majority of funding, that yearly budget, is rollover grants. So basically, if you win a grant once, it usually is a multi-year funding exercise. So you're not expected to perform an experiment in just 1 year, especially if it's a population study or a clinical trial. So it's a really multi-year project. So
Hmm.
every year, the NIH may get a vast number of applications, but it will fund just a few because grants that have already been funded and are rolling over must be funded. So out of that 30 billion, a very large chunk will go to those rollover grants. And those rollover grants, in most cases, it's actually clinical trials. So if you dig down and look into the hood of the US research funding paradigm, those are those lengthy, expensive trials intended to prove the efficacy of specific drug in that highly regulated setting. So just on the research side, there is plenty of money. This is just we need to ensure that this money is properly redistributed.
Okay, I understand.
And China is actually on the regulatory side when it comes to healthcare. It's just as strict, or in some cases more strict than the US. So if you are to launch a drug in China that has been already approved in the US by the FDA, you can't. You need to perform local clinical trials to prove the efficacy. So you need to redo the work. And that's actually
Wow.
quite stupid. I would say in China, it could be one of the greatest countries in terms of biomedical progress and progress in medicine, but currently it's just the science part that is progressing really fast. If you think about the propagation of those advances into the clinic, it is rather slow, even though in some of the provinces and in some of the areas, people take shortcuts. In China, it's one of the countries where everything is prohibited and everything is permitted.
Hmm.
So some of the largest stem cell companies are in China, and they are already in patients with stem cell therapies. So in 2011, I met a person who was a CEO of the world's largest stem cell company by the number of patients. They serviced 9,000 patients with stem cell therapies before 2011. So that's a major achievement. I'm not sure about the efficacy of those treatments, but I'm sure there is some clinical evidence of the effectiveness of those therapies. And the most important thing is that that company now has the data, and they are moving into new areas. So instead of waiting, they are just doing.
Yes, right. I mean, I've read about this, and it seems, in terms of the implications to how quickly things will move along, that won't hurt.
Right. Well, even if it hurts, it would hurt more if we don't do it, because people will slowly deteriorate into the retirement mode and become useless at some point of time to the economy. I mean, we have to look at the facts.
Well, let me give you a quote from your book, which I think is along the same lines, and ask you to comment. It says, in some of the developed countries, we can clearly see the longevity benefits stemming from the technological advances and increases in welfare being virtually erased by high-calorie diets, alcohol, tobacco, drug use, lack of exercise, and physical activity. So, end of quote. So what do you think? I mean, do you think that, okay, so we have people that might be inspired to stay healthy and will eventually be able to take advantage of these rejuvenation therapies. And then we have a large proportion of other citizens who either are not aware or just don't do anything about their own physical well-being, and they deteriorate more so, making it much more difficult for these therapies to be effective. Do you think this could lead to a kind of bifurcation or division of a culture where you have some people who are healthy and partly it's due to having more money and education, and another part that's really in bad health and deteriorating? Do you think that could become a problem?
Absolutely, it's already a problem. Actually, today we might even coin a new term. I think Lawrence Kotlikoff coined the term, he advanced that term, intergenerational theft. In our case, we can say that, there is lifestyle theft and behavioral theft. Because exactly, there is a bifurcation in the society where some people take extremely good health of their extremely good care of their health and contribute to the economy longer and are more productive, and some of the people just don't care about their health, eat and behave in unhealthy manners, and then create a significant toll on social security and healthcare systems. While reducing their healthy, productive lifespan. So yes, there is a bifurcation, and that's probably one of the reasons why we do not see major benefits from some of the technologies that are already on the market.
In terms of lifespans and longevity, you mean?
In terms of lifespans and longevity, and that's why some of the pension funds and governments are so deaf to our calls, is because population statistics speak for themselves, for itself. And we see that there is, in some certain areas, we see life expectancy is declining because of that behavior. So you don't need to be a master statistician to really figure out that there is a problem. If you just walk downtown New York, Baltimore, or any other area where there is high calorie per capita consumption and lots of fast food restaurants and really easily available calories. So I think that those population groups that really do not care about their health, they currently outbalance the the population that is caring for their health. And that's why you do not see a clear benefit of biomedical progress on longevity. So one of the reasons. But soon, hopefully soon, we are going to see biomedical advances outpacing the negative pressure of those unhealthy behaviors. So,
and I think in your book you also had some recommendations or suggestions or ideas around how to get a larger proportion of the population interested in health, such as through corporate programs or being able to qualify only if they do certain healthy behaviors. Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, there are 100 ways to get people more interested in their health. And, one of those ways is to ensure that there is a carrot and a stick in the economy. Currently, everyone is getting, who is getting Social Security can go into a burger joint and enjoy really cheap, high-calorie food. In some cases, you can actually use food stamps to enjoy a nice, greasy burger plus fries and high-calorie drink, high-calorie soda, pop drink. But and actually, that is those unhealthy behaviors are prevalent in the least economically stable part of the population. So we're talking about people on welfare who go and live those unhealthy lifespans. So I think that should be addressed first. I would say that one of the easier ways to combat that obesity epidemic is to tax food by calorie, just like we do it with, that's one of the ideas. Of course, nobody's going to implement that. The fast food industry has a major lobby in Washington. And even putting the caloric count on some of the items was a major challenge, so I think it's a major win for the government. But going forward, if you tax the food based on caloric content, you would be able to drive down the obesity epidemic. And of course, you should not be able to use food stamps to shop at a hamburger joint. Also, it should those social and welfare programs should encourage healthy behavior and discourage unhealthy behavior. And of course, there should be a roadmap for people on Social Security. So if you pursue certain lifestyles and you pursue certain career paths, you should be able to benefit more. So there should be like a steep encouragement and compensation for people for healthy behavior, and still steep discouragement of unhealthy behavior. So there are lots and lots of ways to manipulate the behavior in a society. And the only problem is that, it's not a problem, it's a paradigm. We live in a democracy, and people who pursue those unhealthy behaviors can vote. And people who facilitate the unhealthy behavior can lobby. So think about smoking, for example. Tobacco companies manage to keep their products on the shelf, even though it's extremely unhealthy and addictive. And they manipulate the research data so that the end customers, do not realize how harmful it is. And it's very difficult to fight that industry. So yes, one of the ways to encourage healthy behavior is to combat those providers of unhealthy behavior, like the fast food chains and the cigarette companies. But another way is to look at ways to avoid the negative impacts of the unhealthy behavior, and look at some of the recent advances in biomedical sciences, we already have pills that will almost neglect the effects of high-calorie diet. And we have other pills to demotivate people to consume a lot of food. And we have other pills that will have protective properties against smoking, for sure. So even if you take vitamin E or aspirin, I'm sure you're going to benefit as a smoker. And we should look for various ways to prevent some of the malignancies stemming from those areas, from smoking and pollutants and unhealthy eating habits. So it's really easy to manipulate those results with drugs. And I don't think we are addressing that effectively on the population level.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's the whole issue of the societal acceptance of bad health habits seems to be partly fueled from the corporations that benefit, as well as perhaps even the pharmaceutical companies. How do you think we can really change that kind of messaging so that, in the actual kind of psychology or psyche of the culture, that staying healthy and preventative medicine really does take hold? Is this something that's going to happen from a grassroots level or from a governmental level or some combination? In a realistic point of view, what do you think is the best route?
Well, there are three ways to achieve that. And definitely one is top-down, bottom-up, a combination of the two paradigms. And we can go into a crisis and naturally balance things. So when we're talking about top-down, we really need to have strong policymakers. And perhaps some countries should lead by example, where we have a little bit more, I would say, totalitarian regimes, and especially in China, for example, where government really has a grip on the population, very firm grip. So governments like that should lead by example. And when we see the results, so for example, there is a massive anti-smoking campaign in China, and you can really see how things are changing. So if you were to come to Shenzhen just 10 years ago, you look at the population, everybody is smoking. Even if you walk into a 5-star hotel, Marco Polo, you walk into the elevator, everybody is going to be smoking in the elevator. That was the paradigm, and you could not really breathe in the city. It was so polluted. Look at the city right now. It's still a lot of people smoke, but it's so much less than just 7 years ago. You already got electric cars, electric scooters. If you go further into China, if you go to cities like Suzhou, nearby Shanghai, almost everybody is going to have an electric bicycle or an electric scooter or even an electric car. I saw something completely out of this world. I saw a wooden carriage with an electric motor. Yeah, it's really changing. So the government programs and the propagation of those programs, the institutionalization of those programs is key. So some of the countries should lead by example. And think about Japan. Same thing. Everybody was smoking just 50 years ago. Right now, people still smoke, but much less. And there is a top-down and bottom-up effect. So there is a government program and cultural paradigm where smoking is no longer encouraged. So
now in a democracy, how will that work? Where the power is more in the people, how do the people themselves get turned on if there is a continual barrage of corporate and pharmaceutical type messaging that makes it okay to keep along with the kind of current disease paradigm?
Well, we need anti-tobacco, anti-fast food lobbying groups and groups
Hmm.
that would lobby for healthier behavior, and that's why I wrote the book. I live in
I see.
I'm kind of an international citizen, but I prefer to live in a democracy, and I decided to uh, engage in as many advocacy campaigns as possible, trying to reach as broad of an audience as possible to change things, both on the policy makers side, on the pension fund arena, and talking directly to consumers, saying, hey, well, you should prepare for much longer, brighter, and happier lives going forward, but right now you should do your part. And the more we're going to have those kind of messengers, the stronger we're going to have the lobby. Sorry for my English. It's much better in the book. It's been heavily edited.
Yeah. Okay. So so you mentioned that advocacy is a major part of your activities, and I mean, to me, it's remarkable that there are ways that that influence towards this new paradigm can be forwarded or pushed ahead, and advocacies and lobby groups obviously are part of it. From the individual point of view, from the average person, in particular, my audience is mostly people that are approaching retirement, are concerned about the financial aspects of retirement. Let's switch gears a bit now and talk about the whole idea of the financial aspects of aging and what is referred to, I think, as the longevity dividend. So given that there is this incredible progress in rejuvenation research, and that the possibilities are that governments might see the bright light of accelerating those, from an individual point of view, what should we expect? What should we be thinking of? What can we do to help?
Well, there's lots of things an individual can do to help. And one is, again, well, first of all, on the individual level, the greatest single investment you can make right now is in yourself. So if you're keeping money in the bank and just are trying to work as much as possible to save for retirement, that's probably not the right strategy, because regardless of what scenario is going to transpire within the next 20 years, the winning strategy is to invest in yourself. And I'm talking about two aspects. One is education and your health. So continuous education, continuous learning, and continuous career planning should be there for everyone. So if you are saving for retirement, your investment may not even realize in the future, because there are scenarios where governments are going to go bankrupt and cut programs for retirees. Pension funds are going to lose their solvency. If you think about it, just 100 years ago, we didn't have any retirement system. People just take it for granted and as something very solid that has been around for ages, but it's a very new concept. And you really need to envision a state of collapse of the economy. And I lived through one of those. I was born in the USSR and saw that country collapse. When you're living in a country where you don't even have a remote sense of a possibility of a major collapse, you feel you have a feeling of stability, and it's inherent stability because you are born in the country or you spend so much time in the country, you think that it's impregnable. But suddenly, overnight, the whole system collapses and goes south. And I'm not talking about temperature. Yeah. Suddenly, retirees saw their entire life's savings evaporate in inflation, and pension funds nagging on their obligations, companies going out of business, and government that is completely resilient to the needs, to the requests of retirees. They have other things on their plate to just keep the country alive, to ensure that there is relative stability and relatively smooth transition. And they're fighting for other resources. They don't care about the retirees. The retirees are the first to lose. And in any case of economic collapse or sudden economic decline, the retirees are going to be the first ones to lose. So keeping your skill set fresh, working towards a new career every day, keeping yourself healthy, looking at new ways to extend lifespan, really setting yourself much longer horizons, that's the key to success. And that's something that anyone can do to help the whole world survive, if you think about it, and not only themselves. Because if you look at some of the career paths that the retirees can take today, you are reaching the retirement age, you have a little bit of savings, you count on the government, but there are lots of career options that are both gratifying, satisfying, and profitable. So there are sites like Freelance or Elance where people can get paid for generating content, for doing all kinds of work, mostly intellectual work, and some of that work is actually quite fun. They can work on teams. There are lots of ways to get education, like Coursera, for example, where you can get free courses and even get a free certificate, or engage in local postgraduate or graduate education, continuing education. Some of the universities offer cheap or free courses to seniors, and that's another opportunity to bond and communicate with younger generations to eliminate the generation gap and reduce the toll of psychological aging. And that's actually a very big factor in everyone's life. We're evolutionary designed to age on a psychological level. So one of the ways to combat that is to go and bond and work with a younger population, younger peers.
And just to stay engaged and not think that the retirement goal is one where you disengage, which really has led. A lot of studies have shown that it just basically leads to dissatisfaction, even ill health, and shorter lifespan anyway. Interesting enough that one of the focuses of my own work on the Retirement Singularity blog is a formula that I've called my recipe, which stands for RECIPE, stands for Reframing Retirement, which we've been talking about, elevating the importance of healthcare in your life for staying actively and proactively healthy, and then creating streams of sustainable income, which is the financial aspect, but also to continue to invest in your human capital, which is the I in the recipe. So investing in human capital is exactly what you were just talking about, which is essentially investing in our capabilities, our ability to earn income and stay engaged. And to me, that really, that's a conclusion I came to a while ago, and your book really laid out in a different way how important that is and will be in the future. So I really appreciate your detail of why that's important going forward.